In a quiet hospital corridor where hope and heartbreak walk side by side, a powerful millionaire sat broken, praying for a miracle. His world had money, power, and status, until life showed him a pain he couldn't control. Just when he felt completely alone, a little deaf girl in a faded pink dress walked toward him, holding a simple cup of tea. She couldn't speak. She couldn't hear. But she felt his pain, louder than anyone else. This is not just a story. It's a journey of silent kindness, unexpected strength, and how a child with nothing gave the richest man in the city something priceless: hope. Stay till the end because this heart-touching story will remind you. Sometimes the smallest hands carry the biggest miracles. Victor sat on the cold stone steps as if the world had pushed him down to his knees. He was a man once known for standing tall, for commanding boardrooms, for signing deals that shaped cities. But now, he couldn't even command his own breath. His elbows rested on his knees, his hand pressed against his forehead, trying to hold together the pieces of a life collapsing in silence. The evening air was still, yet inside his chest, a storm raged without sound. Inside those hospital walls, beyond the sliding emergency doors, lay the only person who ever made him feel human: Emily, his wife. She was the one who saw the man, not the money. And now she was fighting for her life. One sudden collapse, one rushed surgery, one call that shattered everything. He had arrived too late to say, "I love you." Victor's eyes were bloodshot, his usually perfect suit now wrinkled and loose. The billionaire who once wore confidence like a crown now looked like a lost child. His hands trembled, not from the cold, but from fear, real, unfiltered fear. What is a man supposed to do when the one thing he cannot buy is time? He remembered how Emily used to smile and say, "All your success means nothing if you don't come home happy." Home. That word stabbed his chest. Without her, home was just walls. Without her laughter, life was just noise. He tried to pray, but failed. He tried to hope, but it slipped through his fingers. "Please, don't leave me," he whispered into the air, his voice softer than a breath. It wasn't a command. It wasn't a bargain. It was a plea from a broken soul. No bodyguard stood beside him. No assistant approached. They all knew. There are moments even wealth cannot touch. A nurse passed nearby but didn't stop. To them, he was just another grieving man. His sight blurred with tears he refused to release. Pride battled pain, but pain was winning. He leaned forward, elbows digging into his thighs, hiding his face from the world. Because what is sorrow, if not something we wish no one would witness? Just then, a touch, soft, light, almost unreal. Victor lifted his head slowly, unsure if he imagined it. And there she was, a little girl, no more than 5, standing before him with solemn, gentle eyes. She wore a faded pink dress, edges frayed. Her shoes were mismatched, one strap broken. And yet she stood like a tiny guardian of grief. In her small hands, trembling slightly, she held out a paper cup of tea. Not coffee, not water. Tea. Warm, simple, human. She said nothing, didn't ask, didn't question. She only offered. For a moment, Victor was speechless. He expected pity from adults, advice from strangers, but never compassion from a child. She didn't look away from his pain. She didn't fear it. She acknowledged it. Her lips parted, but no sound came. That's when he realized she couldn't speak. Yet somehow she had spoken the loudest words he had ever heard. In her silent gesture, she told him, "Someone sees your pain. Please don't be alone." Victor reached for the cup, his hands shaking. As his fingers brushed hers, something broke inside him, something heavy, something long buried. His eyes filled again, but this time his tears carried something new. Not despair, recognition. This little girl, without a single word, had given him something priceless: comfort, understanding, a reason to breathe. And as he looked into her eyes, he realized she was not just passing by. She knew sadness. She lived with it. But why? Why was a child alone at a hospital? Why could she read sorrow like a language? He didn't know it yet, but this little girl was about to change his life forever. Victor held his breath as he stared at the little girl before him. She was so small, so fragile-looking, yet there was something ancient in her eyes, something that came from sorrow, not years. Her large blue eyes were full of empathy, deeper than words could ever reach. She didn't speak, but her gaze whispered, "Please, don't be sad." She lifted her tiny arms again, pushing the warm paper cup gently toward his trembling hand, insisting without a single sound. There was no fear in her, no hesitation, only pure, innocent determination to comfort a stranger. Victor hesitated, not because he didn't want the tea, but because he didn't feel worthy of such kindness. He was a man known by millions, but in that single moment, he felt smaller than her, smaller than a child offering hope. He reached out with shaking fingers. As soon as he touched the cup, her other hand touched his, soft, steady, unafraid of the weight he carried. That touch broke down the final wall he had built around his chest. Her lips moved, but no sound followed. She tried again, forcing out broken breaths of sound. T. For sadness. The words were imperfect. Yet they were the most perfect words he had ever heard. Victor's eyes widened. Not out of surprise, but revelation. She wasn't just silent. She was deaf. She had lived in silence her entire life, yet she could hear the loudest cry of the human heart. He whispered, voice cracking, You brought this for me?" His question trembled like a wounded child. She nodded simply. No pride, no drama, just innocence. A small smile curled on her lips, not the joyful kind, the kind that tells you I understand. Victor's chest tightened painfully. He had seen generosity, charity, luxury, but never this, never silent kindness from someone who had nothing to give but love. She didn't rush him. She didn't tell him to be strong. She simply stood with him in his weakness. In her eyes, he saw a message clearer than speech. Drink it. You are not alone. He brought the cup closer. It smelled faintly of hospital vending machine tea, cheap, watered down, slightly bitter. Yet at that moment, it felt like a crown, a holy offering. His fingers brushed the cup, then froze again. Why was this child here? Who watches her? Why is she alone? She tilted her head, watching him with concern. She lightly tapped her chest twice, then his, signing something. He didn't understand the symbols, but he understood the meaning. Heart. You feel? I feel. His breath shook. He pressed his hand against his mouth to stop the sound of grief from escaping. He had been surrounded by people all his life, yet he had never felt this seen. This truly seen. A tear slipped down his cheek. He didn't wipe it. He didn't hide it. For the first time, crying felt acceptable, because this little girl had given him permission to be human. She watched his tears fall, and instead of fear, her eyes softened even more. She gently reached up, wiped one tear with her thumb, and nodded. It's okay to cry. No adult came. No nurse called her back. No one interrupted this sacred exchange. The world kept moving, footsteps echoing behind them, cars passing outside. But here, in this moment, everything was silent. And in that silence, something beautiful grew. He raised the cup slowly, took a small sip. It was warm, simple, real. And suddenly, he felt something sweet fill his chest, a feeling he couldn't name yet, but one day, he would call it healing. She smiled, a real one this time, a smile that said, "See, you're still alive." Victor didn't know her name, he didn't know her pain, but he knew one thing for certain. This little girl, this silent angel, had just changed the course of his life. Who is she? Where is her family? What sorrow hides behind those brave blue eyes? Victor was still holding the cup when a nurse slowly walked past, pausing as she noticed the little girl by his side. A soft tenderness filled the nurse's eyes. "That's Sarah," she whispered. "Her mother is inside, too. She can't hear, but she feels when someone is sad." Sarah, a name so delicate it felt like it could float away on the wind. And yet here she was, solid, present, strong. A child who spoke not with sound, but with soul. Victor turned his head slowly, studying her with a new kind of wonder. This child, she knew. She understood what it meant to wait, to fear, to ache. And perhaps, like him, she understood what it meant to be powerless in front of those hospital doors. He lifted a trembling hand and pointed to himself, then gently toward her, trying to ask the oldest question in the simplest way. "What is your name?" She blinked, then pressed her small hand to her chest. One letter at a time, she signed it. S-A-R-A-H. The world paused. He repeated it under his breath. "Sarah, a beautiful name. A soft name. A name that felt like prayer." She nodded once, a quiet acceptance. Then, without asking permission, she sat beside him on the steps. Not at a distance, not timidly, but close, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. And though she was only 5, she didn't fidget, didn't swing her legs, didn't look distracted. She sat with the composure of someone much older, someone who had been taught by pain to sit still with grief. Victor looked at her small profile, her tangled blonde hair, her scuffed shoes, the faint bruise on her knee. A child shaped not by softness, but by survival. She did not ask why he cried. She did not try to fix him. She simply sat in his darkness, unafraid. When another tear rolled down his cheek, he didn't expect her to notice, but she did. With her tiny hand, soft and warm, she reached up and gently wiped it away using her thumb, just as a mother would, just as Emily had once done. A simple touch, yet it shattered him. No one had dared to touch his grief. Everyone tiptoed around it like it was fire. But Sarah? She walked right through it, barefoot, unburned. She looked into his eyes, not with pity, but with understanding. Her gaze said, "I know what waiting feels like. I know the sound of a heart that prays." For long minutes, they said nothing. They didn't need to. There were no questions, no explanations, only breathing, only silence, only two broken hearts recognizing each other. In those precious minutes, Victor realized something unthinkable. This silent little girl was louder in compassion than any voice he had ever heard. She didn't ask him to be strong. She didn't tell him it would be okay. She allowed him to be weak. And in that weakness, he found strength. He looked at her and felt something he hadn't felt since before the phone call. Calm. A tiny flame of calm, flickering but alive. Who was she? What pain taught her this grace? How could such a tiny heart carry such enormous empathy? He wanted to speak, to thank her, but his throat locked. Instead, he simply placed his hand over his heart, then pointed softly to her, hoping she understood. "My heart, thanks you. And Sarah?" She smiled, a smile full of quiet wisdom, a smile that belonged not to a child, but to an old soul. They remained there, no words, no promises, just presence. And in that silence, Victor discovered the most powerful conversation of his life. But where was Sarah's mother? And what hidden pain did this child carry in her small, brave heart? Time moved differently on those hospital steps. The world outside continued. Cars passed, nurses hurried, families rushed in and out. But for Victor and Sarah, time stood still. Hours passed in silence. Yet not a single moment felt empty. Victor hadn't moved. He remained seated, shoulders heavy, head bowed. And beside him, Sarah stayed too. She never complained, never fidgeted, never spoke. She only clutched a small teddy bear in her lap, its fur worn out, one ear missing. It looked like it had survived storms, just like her. He glanced at her quietly. She's been waiting alone. No guardian, no family member, just this tiny girl holding on to hope with nothing but a broken toy and unspoken courage. He opened his notebook, something he used for business plans, signatures, contracts. But tonight, it became a bridge between two souls. He wrote slowly, his handwriting shaky. "Are you scared?" He turned the notebook toward her. Sarah read it carefully. She didn't smile, didn't frown. She simply thought, then shook her head gently. Taking the pen, she formed each letter with deep care, like carving truth into stone. "Mom says, be brave." Victor swallowed hard. That one sentence hit him deeper than any wisdom spoken by adults. Be brave. Two simple words, spoken by a child who had every reason to be afraid. He watched her hug the teddy a little tighter. She wasn't made of fear. She was made of waiting, of believing, of silent strength. She didn't run from pain. She sat beside it, just as she sat beside him. For the first time since entering this hospital, Victor didn't feel alone, because he realized this little girl wasn't just offering him tea. She was offering him courage. She lifted her hand and pointed toward the sky. Her eyes followed, wide and trusting. Then she touched her chest gently. She repeated the motion. Sky. Heart. Victor stared, trying to understand. She was signing something. Hope. Hope lives here. He couldn't hold his tears anymore. One slid down his cheek, slow and heavy. He didn't hide it from her this time. He let it fall. "Thank you, Sarah," he whispered, voice breaking. "You are stronger than me." Sarah tilted her head, curious, almost confused. She didn't understand why he called her strong. To her, strength was not absence of fear. It was staying, surviving, believing. They were two hearts waiting. One waiting for a wife, one waiting for a mother. Two souls tied by silent suffering. And yet, in that moment, something invisible passed between them, something deeper than comfort. A promise, a silent pact. They would wait, together. But as the sky darkened, Victor's mind shifted. If Sarah was alone, who was taking care of her? Where was her family? What if she lost everything, just like he feared losing Emily? A new worry grew inside him. Not for himself, but for her. He didn't know it yet. But this child, this brave little heart, was about to lead him to a choice that would change his life forever. What news will the doctors bring? And how far will Victor go to protect the angel who protected him? The cold night air grew heavier, as if the sky itself held its breath. Victor's eyes were fixed on the hospital doors, his heartbeat trapped in his throat. Every second felt like an hour. Every distant footstep sounded like fate approaching. And then, a doctor appeared. His steps were slow, his shoulders heavy, his eyes unbearably gentle. Victor didn't need words. He saw the truth written in that silence, the kind of truth that rips a man's soul in half. "No!" Victor whispered, shaking his head. "No, please!" But the doctor didn't speak. He didn't have to. It had already happened. Emily was gone. Something inside Victor shattered loudly, though no one else could hear it. His knees buckled, and he collapsed against the cold stone of the steps. His hands covered his face as a raw, broken sound tore from his chest, one he had never made in his life. The cry of a man who would give anything to change time. The cry of a husband who just lost the other half of his existence. All the strength he had built, years of image, iron control, power, vanished. He was no longer Victor, the billionaire. He was just a grieving man, begging the universe for one more heartbeat with the woman he loved. "Emily," he sobbed. "Please, no, please." His voice cracked like dry branches. His tears hit the stone below him, each one burning with unbearable love. But then, a touch, a presence. Warm, steady, small. Sarah. She didn't run. She didn't flinch at his pain. She didn't look away. She slipped beside him and gently wrapped her small arms around his shaking one, pressing her cheek against his sleeve. Her eyes, wide with sorrow, glistened, not with fear, but with understanding. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. In her silence, she said everything. "You are not alone. I am here." Victor's chest trembled with grief. This child, this little stranger, was holding him together when he was breaking apart. And then, in an act so pure it pierced the heavens, she did something unimaginable. She took her teddy bear, her only comfort, her only companion, and placed it gently on his lap. A torn ear, dirty fur, loved beyond words. She offered it to him, her only treasure, in exchange for his pain. Victor stared at it through tears. His vision blurred, but his heart saw everything. She was giving him the only thing she had in this world: love. He dropped the cup. He didn't care. He turned, wrapped his arms around her tiny frame, and pulled her close to his chest. He sobbed into her hair, broken, aching, undone. But for the first time since he heard the news, he wasn't crying alone. In that moment, two people, one man, one child, sat on a cold hospital step, both losing someone they loved, both trapped in waiting, both clinging to silence. And yet in that silence something new was born. A bond, a lifeline, a reason. She was a child, but that night she became his strength. He lost a wife, but he gained a light. What happens when morning comes? Will Victor walk away, or will fate tie him to Sarah forever? Weeks passed, and Victor couldn't forget the small girl who held his hand in his darkest hour. He found Sarah again, this time at a rehabilitation center, sitting beside her mother. Her mother had survived, but was fragile, weak, struggling to speak. Sarah sat beside her, gently brushing her hair, offering silent comfort. Victor approached, but he didn't come as a billionaire. He came as a man who had known pain. He covered the medical costs, not as charity, but as gratitude. He brought warm meals, medicine, books, but most importantly, time. He would sit with them, learning silence, learning patience. Sarah would bring tea for him each visit. She would tap her small fingers over her heart and then to his. "Feel better." Victor started learning sign language, just to speak her world's language. She taught him slowly, letter by letter, smile by smile. Months later, Victor launched a foundation for deaf children across America. He named it Sarah's Silent Hope. During the opening ceremony, his voice trembled as he spoke to the crowd. This little girl, who could not hear a single sound, heard my pain louder than anyone else. She gave me her only treasure, her teddy bear. Kindness has no age. Kindness has no voice. Kindness has no price. And that day, America witnessed something more powerful than wealth. They witnessed a broken man healed by a silent child. True kindness doesn't need wealth, power, or words. A little deaf girl with nothing but a teddy bear and a silent heart taught a billionaire the greatest truth. Real strength isn't in hiding pain, it's in sharing it. Real love isn't spoken, it's felt. This story reminds us that compassion can come from anyone, even a child. Silence can carry more love than 1,000 words. No matter how rich or powerful we are, we all need someone who simply stays. In the end, it's not money that saves us. It's kindness.